Duncan Wardle, the former head of innovation and creativity for the Walt Disney Company, is now an independent consultant, working with some of the world's top brands on how to act disruptively and think creatively. He spoke with NBR's Fiona Rotherham about the risk to legacy brands, the difference between entrepreneur and corporate thinking, and his innovation toolbox, plus some tips for founders of Kiwi startups.
You're an independent consultant on innovation and creativity. From your experience so far, how good are companies at this?
No, it's an excellent question. I think the larger and the legacy brands are suffering. They're suffering because, the big motor companies have made cars the same way since 1900. The big soft drink manufacturers have made their products for 50 or 60 years. And the problem is because they're so good at what they've done for the last 110 years, and they were a very product-centric culture. We build it, they will come, whether it's cars, soft drinks, theme parks, and it worked for 110 years. And so they're having a really hard time trying to change from being a very product-centric model to a consumer-centric model. So I think what you see is also the young entrepreneurs of Australia, for example. Look at the amount of entrepreneurs there are between the ages of 18 and 28, right? Well, why are they becoming entrepreneurs? Because they don't trust the big corporations. They believe in purpose before profit. And organizations that worry more about their quarterly results and not about their purpose, I think are really going to suffer in the next decade ahead.
So do you think these legacy companies are responding quickly enough, or are they a bit like a possum caught in the headlights?
I haven't heard the possum caught in the headlights before, but that's exactly what they are, and they're not responding quickly enough because they're focused on their quarterly results. And so, for example, I did a piece of work for a very large brand that's considered the largest tool company in the world. And I went down and spent time in a DIY store and just watched their consumers at the point of purchase. And I went back and reported to them. I said, look, people don't care about your brand. They don't care about your products. They don't care about your price point. When they're actually talking about your brand, what they're actually talking about is themselves. I'm building my dream kitchen, my dream living room, my dream house. I said, your purpose, if you choose to accept it, you're the brand who can help people build their dreams. And if you're a brand who can help people build their dreams, what other lines of business could you get into and get out of the tool industry? And they all looked at me like I was mad. And I said, guys, we're already printing houses in Texas today in 3D. And so imagine what you'll print at home 10 years from now. 20% of your Amazon purchases will be printed on a 3D printer. Well, if I can print anything I want 10 years from now, what will I use a tool for? And the challenge for the tool manufacturers is they're focused on their quarterly results and they're not disrupting. And now it's about disrupt or die. It's not about iteration anymore. It's about innovation. And it's about, but here's the challenge for most companies. Every CEO wants innovation, but they don't know how to do it, and no consultancies are helping them. And so it's about giving people, if you want to change a culture and you want them to be brave and take risks, you have to create a toolkit, an innovation toolkit that normal people, Fred and Sally, your frontline staff members who didn't go to Harvard, didn't go to MIT, don't have an MBA, but they can use these tools to think differently because they're easy to use, they're tangible, and they're fun.
We'll pick up on that toolkit in a minute, but firstly, can you characterise what the key difference is between entrepreneurial thinking then and corporate thinking?
Easy. Risk-taking. Corporations don't take risk, entrepreneurs do. Why do entrepreneurs take risks? Because their business, because they'll go out of business if they don't. So if you think about people who started in a garage, Walt Disney started in a garage, Steve Jobs started in a garage, Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix, started in a, they took risks because they had to survive. Big corporations rely on their bonuses, their shares and their pensions, and they're more worried about their shares than they are the future of their company. And so why take a risk? I've got my quarterly results. And so what we're going to see, you saw Sears go under this year. We've seen Toys R Us go under this year. We saw Blockbuster Video go under a few years ago. You're going to see hundreds go each year in the next decade.
Do you think it's about a lack of ideas within these companies, or is it more around the execution?
Good question. I don't think there's a lack of ideas in any company. I think there's hundreds of ideas. Getting those ideas done. My definition of creativity is having the idea. Innovation is getting it done. And I think that too many companies, their legacy systems are so big, and their turf and their structure are so big, they're finding it really hard to behave like an entrepreneur. And my advice to them would be to start an accelerator program and pitch out whatever your challenge is to the outside market. I believe in open source innovation, and I believe it will totally come to open source innovation. If you can go out and you have a challenge and you have X amount of employees, but you put your challenge out to the marketplace, well, the marketplace has a lot more people than you do, and then you might Shark Tank it down to 4 or 5 ideas, bring them inside the organization. These are young entrepreneurs. They know their product really well. They're very passionate about it, but they don't know how to build a business plan, but you do. And so you could bring them in, to pick your best 6 projects, bring them in for 6 months, mentor them around how to build a business project, help them bring this product to market, and take a joint share in it.
When you were at Disney, how did you bring about the change there, and was it through this innovation toolkit?
It was about really helping a very product-centric, we build it, they will come. We build fireworks, we build parades, you will come, culture, to becoming a very consumer-centric culture, and actually embedded in what consumers are looking for, not what the business is looking for. So one example is we used a tool called What If, and I use it all the time. You list the rules of your challenge as quickly as you can, and you ask, what if those rules didn't exist? So in 2008, instead of asking, how might we make more money, which is how most companies start a challenge, we asked, how might we solve the biggest consumer pain point, which was standing in line? And we said, what if there were no lines? What if there was no line for front desk, for an attraction, for merchandise, for your fast forward to 2014, Disney's Magic Band entered the market. It is a plastic band. It sits on your wrist. It has an RFID chip in it. It is your room key. You don't need to just wait to check in anymore. It's your ticket to the theme park. You don't have to wait to get in line. It's your rides are reserved on this, and you just touch the ride system. You touch an item of merchandise once, it goes to your hotel room. Twice, it goes to your house. Think about the per caps on that. I keep my lunch saved on my fast food lunch saved on my smartphone. As soon as I enter the restaurant knows I'm here, knows what I've ordered, and food comes fresh to me. If we'd asked how might we make more money, we would put our gate prices up 2%. But by asking how might we solve the biggest consumer pain point, as a result of the project, the average consumer now has 2 hours free time inside a Disney theme park each day that they didn't have 4 years ago. Think about what we do with our free time. We spend money. It was probably the single biggest revenue generating idea without significant capital investment required. No new rides, attractions, parades. Obviously there was some investment, of course. And think about big data. Every second of every day we are open source innovation. Consumers are telling Disney what they like and what they don't like. And so all future products and services that are created while being informed by the consumer in this Magic Band.
People don't like change, though. So how did you enforce that sort of change of thinking?
Yeah, that's a fair question. It's not about enforcing change. It's if you give people the tools, simple and easy and tangible tools that are easy to use and fun, they will be brave, they will take risks. But if you don't do that, you can't expect, and as leaders within an organization, if the leaders don't embrace change, but again, they have to model the leadership behaviors required in order, so for example, if I were to ask you, where are you when you get your best ideas, you'll probably say shower, bathroom, running, jogging, walking. Never at work, right? Well, that's an issue because we're paid to have big ideas at work. And so it's about being playful. You think of how children think. They think very expansively. They're very playful. They have imagination. They're very curious. We think very reductively. We think, how can we get this done? And so I don't expect people to be childish, but I do expect them to be childlike when they're trying to have new ideas. And actually, by being playful, you can open that door between your conscious and subconscious brains, such as when you're in the shower, when you have that big idea. That's just because you've given yourself time to think. The single biggest barrier to innovation is time. And we hear ourselves say, I don't have time to think. When you don't have time to think in that argument, you can't come up with a killer one-liner till 5 minutes after the argument. You can't come up with a big idea. But the moment you relax, go to the shower, walk the dog, you give yourselves time to think. Organizations don't. Your calendars are full. Think of the biggest barrier to innovation is time. Probably, if I were to ask you to name 5 of the most innovative companies in the world, chances are Google would be in that list. What do Google do that nobody else does? They give their employees time to think. It's called 20% time. And their engineers are actually given 1 day a week time to think, which came out with Gmail, Google Goggles, Google Maps, and Google Glasses. So, try, perhaps, even if you're a smaller organization, just give your employees 1 day a month. No meetings, no emails, no presentations. Give them time to think.
I was going to say, it's much harder to do that in a smaller organisation, of which, Kiwi companies are, than it is in a big corporate, isn't it?
Yes and no. I mean, for a smaller organisation, maybe you just take one breakfast once a month. From 9 till 10:30, you pick the first Friday of every month, bring your employees around a table like this, get them to bring a brown bread breakfast, and talk about one example of something they've seen innovative in the last 30 days. No presentations, no why is it good for the business, just an example of something they're passionate about. They've got enough work, don't give them any. You'd be amazed how many ideas you can tie back to that breakfast.
What would you say is the most important tool in the toolbox then?
I love What If, personally, and you literally list the rules of your challenge. So for us, the rules of going to a Disney theme park: it's hot, it's humid, it's expensive, I have to stand in line. You take one rule, we chose stand in line, and said, what if you didn't have to stand in line? It was founded by Walt Disney. He created a whole new industry by using the tool. He used to, if you remember Fantasia, he listed the rules of showing his movie in a movie theatre. It's dark, it's dirty, I have to go at a set time, I can't control the environment. And he said, what if I could control the environment? That wasn't provocative enough. So he said, what if I took my movies out of the theatre? We said, well, imagine a world where I make that work. Well, then they would have to be three-dimensional. Well, if they're three-dimensional, the princesses couldn't live next to the pirates. They'd have to live in different areas. Ooh, I know, I'll call it Disneyland. Now, fast forward to 2005, Reed Hastings. He listed the rules of going to Blockbuster: have to be kind and rewind, have to go at a set time, have to drive to a physical store. And he said, what if there's no physical store? And he imagined a world where that might actually work. And he said, well, wait a minute. YouTube already exists. They stream amateur content. What if I did a deal with the movie studios to stream professional content? Now nobody has to be kind and rewind. Nobody has to go to a physical store. Everyone gets the one they want on opening day weekend. They can have them 24/7. I know, I'll call it Netflix. He took it to Blockbusters 5 times. They turned him down 5 times. So it's a very powerful tool and a very simple tool to use.
What companies would you rate it being particularly good at this stuff?
Where the smaller companies, candidly, entrepreneurs, they're very good at it. They challenge rules every day. The big companies don't. And yet, if there was a tool that allows you to actually break the rules without actually breaking them, how powerful could that be? We are all, so for example, I've done some work for some major automotive companies in the last 6 months. Their biggest challenge is they know how to make a car, and they've done it for 110 years. Now you've got Google and Apple coming in the last 5 years saying, we're going to make cars, and we don't know how to make them. So there are no rules for Apple and Google because they don't know how to make a car. But they already know they don't need a steering wheel. So who do you think will be making cars 10 years from today? The big automotive companies that are there today, or Apple and Google?
What do you see as the key differences in business today than it would have been, say, 20 years ago?
3 dynamics that I think are moving very, very quickly. The first is artificial intelligence. It's coming, and it's coming fast. They say that the average artificial intelligence robot, for example, will be 5,000 times more intelligent than the human race by 2025. That's part 1. Part 2 is you've got a culture where we need to shift from being product-centric, we build it, they will come, to a consumer-centric culture. And third, and the biggest one that perhaps people aren't watching but they ought to watch, is Generation Z, the ones coming underneath the millennials that care more about your purpose than your profit. And if you care more about quarterly results, they will see out of business in less than 2 decades, because they will not only not buy your products and services if they don't believe in your purpose, they don't want to work for you either. And so you've got those 3 dynamics coming together. I think this is the most disruptive decade, certainly, that I've seen in my lifetime. I think it's half terrifying and half exciting. But again, if you give people simple and easy and tangible tools to use to help them think differently and take those risks, they will.
And just finally, Duncan, would you have any tips for Kiwi entrepreneurs?
I do. It's an easy one. So the 4 skill sets that I think will become the most strongest in the next decade are 4 things we're born with. We're all born very creative, right? We're all born with an amazing imagination. We're all born with intuition, and we're all born very curious. Now, those things get knocked out of us as we go through school and education. It's about reminding yourself that you were a child once. They think very expansively. Remember when you saw, it wasn't a box, it was a spaceship, right? But then education taught you it was a box. And so, and we're told there's only one right answer. Children are very curious. They ask why, and why again. And we stop asking why because we're told there's one right answer. I think if I were to give anybody tips, focus, the 4 strongest skill sets in the next decade will be curiosity, intuition, creativity and imagination, because they are the 4 skill sets that will not be replaced by artificial intelligence.